been played already on this. Okay. Badass woman in history. Hopefully I don't get interrupted. Let's see what happens. Rita Hayworth was born Margarita Carmen Cansino in Brooklyn, New York, the oldest child of two dancers. Excuse me. Her father, Eduardo Cansino, was of Romani descent from Castilleja de la Cuesta, a little town near Seville, Spain. Her mother, Volga Hayworth, was an American of Irish and English descent who had performed with the Ziegfeld Follies. The couple married in 1917. They also had two sons, Eduardo Jr. and Vernon. Her maternal uncle, Vincent Hayworth, was also an actor. Margarita's father wanted her to become a professional dancer, while her mother hoped she would become an actress. Her paternal grandfather, Antonio Cansino, was renowned as a classical Spanish dancer. He popularized the bolero in his dancing school in Madrid, was world famous. Antonio Cansino instructed Rita Hayworth's first dance lesson. Hayworth later recalled, "From the time I was 3.5, as soon as I could stand on my own feet, I was given dance lessons." She noted, "I didn't like it very much, but I didn't have the courage to tell my father, so I began taking the lessons. Rehearse, rehearse, rehearse. That was my girlhood." She attended dance classes every day for a few years in a Carnegie Hall complex where she was taught by her uncle Angel Cansino. Before her 5th birthday, she was one of the 4 Cansinos featured in the Broadway production of the Greenwich Village Follies at the Winter Garden Theater. In 1926, at the age of 8, she was featured in La Fiesta, a short film for Warner Brothers. In 1927, her father took the family to Hollywood. He believed that dancing could be featured in the movies and that his family could be part of it. He established his own dance studio, where he taught such stars as James Cagney and Jean Harlow. In 1931, Eduardo Cansino partnered with his 12-year-old daughter to form an act called the Dancing Cansinos. Her hair was dyed from brown to black to give her a more mature and Latin appearance. Since under California law, Margarita was too young to work in nightclubs and bars, her father took her with him to work across the border in Tijuana, Mexico. In the early 1930s, it was a popular tourist spot for people from LA. Because she was working, Cansino never graduated from high school, but she completed the 9th grade at Hamilton High in Los Angeles. Cansino, or Hayworth, took a bit part in the film Cruise. Now, this is from Wikipedia, so if there's any typos or some shit. A bit part in the film Cruz Diablo in 1934. At age 16, which led to another bit part in the film In Caliente 1935 with the Mexican actress Dolores del Rio. I wonder if you guys saw that spit. She danced with her father in such night spots as the Foreign and the Caliente clubs. Winfield Sheehan, the head of the Fox Film Corporation, saw her dancing at the Caliente Club and quickly arranged for Hayworth to do a screen test a week later. Impressed by her screen persona, Sheehan signed her for a short-term 6-month contract at Fox under the name Rita Cansino, the first of 2 name changes during her film career. During her time at Fox, Hayworth was billed as Rita Cansino and appeared in unremarkable roles, often cast as the exotic foreigner. In 1934, age 16, she performed a dance sequence in the Spencer Tracy film Dante's Inferno in 35, when she was put under contract in February of 1935. She had her first speaking role as an Argentinian girl in Under the Pampas Moon. She played an Egyptian girl in Charlie Chan in Egypt, 1935, and a Russian dancer in Patio Day. Sheehan was grooming her for the lead in the 1936 Technicolor film Ramona, hoping to establish her as Fox Films' new Dolores Del Rio. By the end of her 6-month contract, Fox had merged into 20th Century Fox, with Daryl F. Zanuck serving as the executive producer. Dismissing Sheehan's interest in her giving Loretta Young the lead in Ramona, Zanuck did not renew Cansino's contract. Sensing her screen potential, salesman and promoter Edward C. Judson, with whom she would elope in 1937, got freelance work for her in several small studio films, and a part in the Columbia Pictures feature Meet Nero Wolfe in 1936. Studio head Harry Cohn signed her to a 7-year contract and tried her out in small roles. Cohn argued that her image was too Mediterranean, which limited her to being cast in exotic roles that were fewer in number. He was heard to say her last name sounded too Spanish. Judson acted on Cohn's advice. Rita Cansino became Rita Hayworth when she adopted her mother's maiden name, to the consternation of her father. With a name that emphasized her British-American ancestry, people were more likely to regard her as a classic American. With Cohn, quote-unquote, with Cohn and Judson's encouragement, Hayworth changed her hair color to dark red and had electrolysis to raise her hairline and broaden the appearance of her forehead. Hayworth appeared in 5 minor Columbia pictures. Whoa. So they used to raise women's hairlines so you could see more of the forehead. Wow. It's very interesting. So Cohn began to build up Hayworth in 1940. Features such as Music in My Heart, The Lady in Question, and Angels Over Broadway. That year she was first featured in a Life magazine cover story. While on loan to Warner Bros., Hayworth appeared as the second female lead in The Strawberry Blonde, opposite James Cagney. She returned in triumph to Columbia Pictures and was cast in the musical You'll Never Get Rich, opposite Fred Astaire, in one of the highest budgeted films Columbia had ever made. The picture was so successful, the studio produced and released another Astaire-Hayworth picture the following year, You Were Never Lovelier. Astaire's biographer Peter Levinson writes that the dancing combination of Astaire and Hayworth was absolute magnetism on the screen. Although Astaire made 10 films with Ginger Rogers, her other main dancing partner, Hayworth's sensuality surpassed Rogers' cool technical expertise. Rita's youthful exuberance meshed perfectly with Fred's maturity and elegance, says Levinson. Weird. But I guess. When Astaire was asked who his favorite dance partner was, he tried not answering the question, but later admitted it was Hayworth. All right, I'll give you a name, he said, but if you ever let it out, I swear I lied. It was Rita Hayworth. Astaire commented that Rita danced with trained perfection and individuality. She was better when she was on than at rehearsal. Biographer Charlie Reinhardt describes the effect she had on Astaire's style. There was a kind of reserve about Fred. It was charming and carried over to his dancing. With Hayworth, there was no reserve. She was very explosive, and that's why I think they really complemented each other. In August 1941, Hayworth was featured in an iconic life photo in which she posed in a negligee with a black lace bow dice. Bob Landry's photo made Hayworth one of the top 2 pinup girls of the World War II years. The other girl was Betty Grable in a 1943 photograph. For 2 years, Hayworth's photograph was the most requested pinup photograph in circulation. In 2002, the satin nightgown Hayworth wore for the photo sold for $26,888. In March 1942, Hayworth visited Brazil as a cultural ambassador for the Roosevelt administration's Good Neighbor policy under the auspices of the Office of the Coordinator of the Inter-American Affairs. During the 1940s, Hayworth also contributed to the OCIAA's cultural diplomacy initiatives in support of Pan-Americanism. I'm not quite... I think that was whenever they wanted Panama and America so that they could get that Panama Canal. Alright, so let's see, what else we got? So when Gilda was in release, it was widely reported that an atomic bomb, which was scheduled to be tested at Bikini Atoll in the Pacific Ocean's Marshall Islands, which is, I think, where Bikini Bottom was. So that's like if all those animals Bikini Bottom mutated and became SpongeBob. Would bear an image of Hayworth, a reference to her bombshell status. Although the gesture was undoubtedly meant as a compliment, Hayworth was deeply offended. Orson Welles, the married to Hayworth, recalled her anger in an interview with biographer Barbara Leaning. Rita used to fly, I'm still using this, Rita used to fly into terrible rages all the time, but the angriest was when she found out that they put her on the atom bomb. Rita almost went insane. She was so angry. She wanted to go to Washington to hold a press conference, but Harry Cohn wouldn't let her because it would be unpatriotic. Wells tried to persuade Hayworth that the whole business was not a publicity stunt on Cohn's part, that it was simply homage to her from the flight crew. Damn. I mean, I would have been mad too. Like, it's interesting. On June 30th, 1946, broadcast of Orson Welles' commentaries, Welles said of the imminent test, I want my daughter to be able to tell her daughter that the grandmother's picture was on the last atom bomb ever to explode. The fourth atomic bomb ever to be detonated was decorated with a photograph of Hayworth cut from the June 1946 issue of Esquire magazine. Above it was stenciled the device's nickname Gilda in 2-inch black letters. Let's see. So Hayworth's performance in Welles' 1947 film The Lady from Shanghai was critically acclaimed, but the film's failure at the box office was attributed in part to Hayworth's famous red hair being cut short and bleached platinum blonde for the role. Cohn had not been consulted and was furious that Hayworth's image was changed. Also in 1947, Hayworth was featured in a life cover story by Winthrop Sargent that resulted in her being nicknamed the Love Goddess. The term was adopted and later used as the title of a biopic and a biography about her. In a 1980s interview, Hayworth said, "Everybody else does nude scenes, but I don't. I never made nude movies. I didn't have to do that. I danced. I was provocative, I guess, in some things, but I was not completely exposed." Good for you. Like, for real, like, that's what's up. In 1948, at the height of her fame, Hayworth traveled to Cannes and was introduced to Prince Ali Khan. They began a year-long courtship and were married on May 12th, 1949. Hayworth left Hollywood and sailed for France, breaking her contract with Columbia. Because Hayworth was already one of the most well-known celebrities in the world, the courtship and the wedding received enormous press coverage around the world. Because she was still legally married to second husband Orson Welles during the early days of her courtship with the prince, Hayworth also received some negative backlash, causing some American fans to boycott her pictures. Their wedding marked the first time a Hollywood actress became a princess. On December 28th, 1949, Hayworth gave birth to the couple's only daughter, Princess Yasmin Aga Khan. Though Hayworth was anxious to start a new life abroad, away from Hollywood, Ali Khan's flamboyant lifestyle and duties proved too difficult for Hayworth. She struggled to fit in with his friends and found it difficult to learn French. Ali Khan was also known in circles as a playboy, and it was suspected he had been unfaithful to Hayworth during the marriage. In 1951, a couple years later, Hayworth set sail with her 2 daughters for New York. Although the couple did reconcile for a short time, they divorced in 1953. After the collapse of her marriage to Khan, Rita Hayworth was forced to return to Hollywood to star in her comeback picture Affair in Trinidad, which came out in 1952, which again paired her with Glenn Ford. Director Vincent Sherman recalled that Hayworth seemed rather frightened at the approach of doing another picture. She continued to clash with Columbia boss Harry Khan and was placed on suspension during filming. Nevertheless, the picture was highly publicized. The picture ended up grossing $1 million more than her previous blockbuster, Gilda. I mean, she became a princess, so like the public ate it up. She continued. I mean, this is a movie, yo. This is crazy. So she made more movies. She became Columbia's top female star. Then after a movie in 1957, she left Columbia for good. She continued working throughout the 60s and the 70s. She made a Western her last film was The Wrath of God, a Western in 1972. She was suspended without pay for 9 weeks because she refused to appear in Once Upon a Time. During this period in Hollywood, contract players could not choose their films. They were on salary rather than receiving a fixed amount per picture. Wow. So they definitely had to change that in Hollywood, because if you don't want to be an actor, then not be able to pick what you can be in, obviously. In 1947, contract provided, which was in Switzerland. Hollywood must be told its already tarnished reputation will sink to rock bottom if it restores this reckless woman to a place among its stars. Whoa. Oh, an article in the British periodical The People called for a boycott of Hayworth's films. Haters. Hayworth might be worth $10 million today. Oh, Khan expressed his frustration in 1957 interview with Time magazine. Hayworth might be worth $10 million today easily. She owned 20% of the profits with her own company and had hit after hit, and she had to get married and had to get out of the business and took a suspension because she fell in love again. In 5 years, at 2 pictures a year at 25%, think of what she could have made. But she didn't make pictures. She took 2 or 3 suspensions. She got mixed up with different characters. Unpredictable. So she really didn't like it there. She called that dude a monster. She said that he exploited her. I mean, I can see both sides for sure. Public image. She was a top glamour girl in the 40s, like we talked about. I mean, she was everywhere. Personal life. So this was kind of crazy. Hayworth confided to Orson Welles that her father began to sexually abuse her as a child when they were young. When they were touring together as the dancing Cansinos. Her biographer, Barbara Lehman, wrote that her mother may have been the only person to know. She slept in the same bed as her daughter to try to protect her. Lehman wrote that the abuse experiments by Hayworth as a young girl contributed to her difficulty in relationships as an adult. Poor girl. Poor woman. But a badass woman, because despite all that, she stayed strong. She was married and divorced 5 times. She had a battle with alcoholism. Her daughter, the little princess, talked about how she remembers her mother drinking a lot. In 1972, the 50-year-old Hayworth wanted to retire from acting, but she needed money. At the suggestion of Robert Mitchum, she agreed to the film The Wrath of God. The experience exposed her poor health and her worsening mental state because she could not remember her lines. Her scenes were shot one line at a time. Damn. In November, she agreed to complete one more movie, the British film Tales That Witness Madness. Because her worsening health, she left the set and returned to the United States. She never returned to acting. Oh, shit. In March 1974, both of her brothers died within a week of each other, which caused her great sadness and led to heavy drinking. In January 1976, at London's Heathrow Airport, Hayworth was removed from a TWA flight after having an angry outburst while traveling with her agent. The event attracted much negative publicity. A disturbing photograph was published in newspapers the next day. Hayworth's alcoholism hid symptoms of what was eventually understood to be Alzheimer's disease. Oh, so she died. She aged prematurely because of her addiction to alcohol and also because of the many stresses in her life. Wow. So in July 81, she was to be placed under the care of her daughter, Princess Yasmin H. Khan of New York City. Hayworth lived in an apartment on Central Park West, adjoining that of her daughter, who arranged for her mother's care during her final years. When they asked how her mother was doing, Yasmin would reply, "She's still beautiful, but it's a shell." Wow. Interesting. In an interview which he gave the evening before his death in 85, Wells called Hayworth one of the dearest and sweetest women that ever lived. So why does it say... In 83, Rebecca Wells arranged to see her mother for the first time in 7 years. Speaking to his lifelong friend Roger Hill, Orson Welles expressed his concern about the visit's effect on his daughter. Rita barely knows me now, Wells said. He recalled seeing Hayworth 3 years before at an event which Reagan held for Frank Sinatra. When it was over, I came over to her table and I saw that she was very beautiful, very reposed looking, and didn't know me at first. After about 4 minutes of speaking, I could see that she realized who I was and she began to cry quietly. Wow. Ooh, crazy. Shout out to her. Rita Hayworth was one of our country's most beloved stars, glamorous and talented. She gave us many wonderful moments on stage and screen and delighted audiences from the time she was a young girl. That's wild. Badass Woman of History. Yo, we just went on a journey together. Whoo wee.